Thank you. Property tax! Now! Okay, guys, thank you very much for being here. This is a fight we're going to win. All right. Okay. Thank you all very much for coming. The issues that we're talking about today are of huge, huge consequence to the future of our country and to millions and millions of low and moderate income and middle class families. And with us today, before I make my remarks, we have three speakers who are going to speak briefly on this issue. And first, I'm very pleased that we have Alexandra Flores Quilty, who is the Vice President of the United States Student Association, which represents some 1.5 million students across the United States. Alexandra? All right, come on up and do it.
Thank you. Hello and good morning. My name is Alexandra Flores Quilty. I'm the elected Vice President of the United States Student Association, USSA. I was raised in Hillsboro, Oregon by my mother, who was a proud working class Latina. I come from a hardworking family who have unfortunately always struggled with money. So when it came time for college, we were not sure whether or not it would be an option for me. But my mother's determination for me, her daughter, to have a better life and opportunity, I found myself enrolled at the University of Oregon. While I was in school, I worked multiple jobs and many times did not know whether or not I was going to have the money to return the following semester for school. I wasn't able to graduate on time, and I now have over $20,000 in student loan debt and another $30,000 with my mother. This is a burden that my family will have for decades. Today, I have the honor and privilege to work with over 1.5 million student members across the country who are struggling to navigate the higher education system as I have. There is over $1.3 trillion of student debt weighing on people across the country. This debt has doubled since 2007. We need to stop the accumulation of student debt before the bubble pops. We need to stop the system that for so many people has priced them out of an education and a better future. Education is the foundation of any country. And if we want this country to thrive, everyone must be able to have access to an education, regardless of their identity and regardless how much money they have or their family has. Senator Sanders' proposal is exactly what the broken system of the U.S. higher education system needs. A free education means a free society. I want to thank Senator Sanders for being a champion for students and working families. Students and families need tuition-free college, and we need Senator Sanders' legislation to ensure that education is a right, not a privilege. Thank you very much.
Next, we're going to hear from Octavia Savage from Newark, New Jersey, who just received her bachelor's degree in accounting from Bloomfield College, and she's going to share her experience with us about paying for college. Octavia?
Good morning. My name is Octavia Savage. I am from Newark, New Jersey, and I have recently received my bachelor's degree in accounting from Bloomfield College. When applying for college, the most important concern about college was how would I pay for school. I can say that college not being affordable has discouraged many intelligent Americans in pursuing a degree. Americans from pursuing a degree. As I stand here, I can't help but relate to my college experience. During college, I worked multiple jobs like UPS at the Bloomfield College Library, Sprint, and Walmart. I've worked overnight and daytime hours just to be able to afford things such as books, transportation, and summer classes so that I will be here today graduating on time. Even with those jobs and other financial aid, I still leave school with $26,000 in debt. And I am considered lucky out of other college students because the average college student leaves school with $29,400 in student loan debt. This is the exact reason why I strongly support Senator Sanders' bill to make college tuition free. Students should not have to drown in debt to get an education they need to survive. Thank you.
Great job. Okay, and now we're going to hear from Roseanne DeMoro. Roseanne is the Executive Director of the National Nurses United, who I think has some support back there. But not only has Roseanne and the union been a strong fighter for quality, affordable education for all people, but she has also understood that it's important that we have a progressive tax system in America. And I want to thank Roseanne for being with us today. Roseanne?
Well, you know, thank you so much, Senator Sanders, for a lifetime of just pure integrity. I just have to say, if everyone in Washington, D.C. was like you, we would have the most incredible country in the world. The nurses are here because we have fought long and hard for a Robin Hood, a small, minimal financial transaction tax to fund education, to fund health care, to fund shoring up our environment, to fund all of the things that have to do with human suffering. Because what the nurses see at the bedside is all of the despair that ultimately ends up in a hospital that is completely unnecessary. This bill, education, it's outrageous that our country, when so many other countries don't have free education. This country, the United States, and still it took today. So we are here to tell the world, really, because the Robin Hood tax is a worldwide phenomenon, that this is not just a bill. And we certainly salute you, Senator, for introducing this bill for free education and a minimal tax on Wall Street, on the obscene profits of Wall Street that could fund so much that has to do with building our infrastructure, fighting for jobs, fighting for the economy, fighting for health care, and for fighting for free education, and a myriad of other things. $300 billion with a minimal tax on Wall Street. So the nurses stand here today with 170 other endorsing groups to say that we are here to support your bill, we are here to support your movement, and we are here not just to sit back and support your movement, Senator Sanders, but to build this movement with you. So thank you so much, and thank you again for the lifetime of genuine, humane courage and having the courage of your convictions always. And I applaud the nurses for having the integrity and the courage to take a Robin Hood tax forward. People say, why are the nurses fighting for a Robin Hood tax? You know why the nurses are fighting for a Robin Hood tax? Because they experience despair and human suffering with every shift that is completely unnecessary. A financial transaction tax, free education. People go to college. There's so many people who are working on low-wage, underpaid jobs, horrible jobs, that if there were education, they could be providing social services to our country. They could be caring for our country like the nurses are doing. And yet nurses have enormous student debt as well. Everyone has unnecessary student debt that thwarts their standard of living, that thwarts their life. It's horrendous. This country can do better. And Senator Sanders, we're with you.
Roseanne, thank you so much. And we thank all of the nurses, not only for the life-saving work they perform every single day, but for getting active in the political process as well. We have a crisis in higher education today. Too many of our young people cannot afford a college education, and many of those who are leaving school are faced with crushing debt. It is a national disgrace that hundreds of thousands of young Americans do not go to college, not because they are unqualified, but simply because they cannot afford it. This is absolutely counterproductive to our efforts to create a strong, competitive economy and a vibrant middle class. This is not what America is supposed to be about. This disgrace has got to end. In a global economy, when our young people are competing with workers from throughout the world, we have got to have the best educated workforce possible. That's how we create decent paying jobs. That's how we grow the middle class. And that means that we have got to make college education affordable. We have got to make sure that every qualified American in this country who wants to go to college, who has the ability and the desire to go to college, is able to go to college regardless of the income of his or her family. But today, not only are we addressing the crisis of college affordability, we are also addressing another issue that impacts millions of families, and that is that it is totally unacceptable that 40 million Americans are drowning in more than $1.2 trillion in student loan debt. Not acceptable. It is unacceptable that millions of college graduates cannot afford to buy their first home, cannot afford to buy their first car because of the outrageously high interest rates they are paying on student debt. It is unacceptable that in many instances, interest rates on student loans are 2 to 3 times higher than on auto loans. Let's be clear. Other nations around the world understand the benefits of having an educated workforce that is not burdened with enormous student debt. Other countries around the world recognize that allowing all qualified students, regardless of income, to achieve a higher education is an investment in the economic prosperity of their people. Just a few examples. Last year, tuition was eliminated in Germany because policymakers there believed that charging $1,300 a year was discouraging students from attending college. $1,300 a year, and that tuition was eliminated in Germany. In Denmark, not only is college free of tuition and fees, people who go to college in that country actually get paid to go to college. In Finland, Norway, and Sweden, tuition and fees are free not only for their citizens, but in many cases for foreign students as well. And Chile, which has the highest level of income inequality in Latin America, will implement free college tuition next year and pay for it by increasing taxes on corporations. But it is not just other countries around the world that are increasingly doing the right thing. There was a time not so many years ago when we in the United States understood the importance of making college available to all qualified students regardless of income. Here in the United States, over a generation ago, our nation's public colleges and universities were the pathways for all students, no matter their family background, to enter the middle class. For example, the University of California system, considered by many to be the crown jewel of public education here in this country, did not begin charging tuition until the 1980s. In 1965, average tuition at a 4-year public university was just $243, and many of the best colleges, including the City University of New York, did not charge any tuition at all. And this investment in higher education worked. The United States, once with a vibrant middle class, led the world in terms of the percentage of our young people with college degrees. Sadly, tragically, today we are in 12th place. It is time for a fundamental change in how we approach the financing of higher education, and the legislation I introduced today will do just that. The College for All Act will provide free tuition at every public college and university in America. This means, and I want you all to appreciate what this means that any student, regardless of his or her background or income, who has the ability and desire, will be able to get the education they need and the education they deserve. This legislation opens the door to the middle class for millions of our working families and their kids, and it will make our economy stronger and more productive. This legislation will establish a partnership with states by developing a matching grant program which would provide $2 in federal funding for every dollar that states spend on tuition-free higher education in public colleges and universities. This legislation would also expand the federal work-study program because we have, as we heard today, millions of kids who cannot focus on their education because they're working 20 or 30 hours a week. That is not the way you get the best education possible. This legislation not only addresses the crisis of college affordability, but it also deals with another issue of huge consequence, and that is the incredibly oppressive burden of crushing student loan debt. I cannot go anyplace in the state of Vermont where young people or their parents are not coming up to me and saying, this is crazy. My kid has a $30,000 debt. My kid has a $50,000 debt. I talked to a doctor, a young doctor, and she told me that her crime, the crime of going to medical school and becoming a primary care physician, was a $300,000 debt. Does that make sense to anybody? This legislation will allow every American with student debt to refinance their loans so that borrowers will always be able to take advantage of favorable interest rates. It makes no sense to me that Americans can now refinance their homes when interest rates are low, and that somebody today can take out an auto loan with a 1 or 2% interest rate, but millions of college graduates are stuck with interest rates of 5, 6, 7%, and sometimes they're stuck with that debt for decades. This is grossly unfair. This legislation would cut student loan interest rates in half and lower the rate to about 2% for undergraduates. In addition, this legislation would eliminate the obscene profit that the federal government makes through the student loan program, some $89 billion over a 10-year period. The federal government should not be profiting off of student loans provided to low-income and moderate-income families. That is not a progressive way to make money. Now, the truth is, and we acknowledge it, that providing free tuition at public colleges and universities and reducing the burden of student debt in this country is an expensive proposition. So how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for the estimated $750 billion over the next 10 years that this program will cost? And here's the answer. At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, at a time when trillions of dollars in wealth have been shifted from the middle class and working families of this country to the top 0.1%, at a time when the wealthiest people in this country have made huge amounts of money from risky derivative transactions and the soaring value of the stock market, this legislation would impose a speculation fee on Wall Street investment houses and hedge funds. More than 1,000 economists have endorsed a tax on Wall Street speculation, and today some 40 countries throughout the world have already imposed a financial transaction tax, including Britain, Germany, France, Switzerland, China, and many others. This legislation would impose a Wall Street speculation fee of 0.5% on stock trades, a 0.1% fee on bonds, and an even lower fee on derivatives. It has been estimated, and the truth is it is hard to come up with the estimate, but it is estimated that this legislation would raise up to $300 billion a year, more than enough to cover this program and leaving us additional revenue to do all the other important things that need to be done in this country. If we are to end the decline of the American middle class, it is clear to me that we must revolutionize the financing of our nation's higher education system. We must invest in the young people today because they are our nation's future doctors, nurses, teachers, engineers, scientists, and public officials. We must invest in our young people today because, once again, this nation must lead the world, not only in terms of the quality of our education, but in the strength of our economy. So I want to thank all of you who are here today in supporting this legislation, and we're happy to take any questions that any media might have, or not. You are with?
The Washington Times.
I've heard of the Washington Times, yes.
If you can't pass this bill now, what makes you think you can do so for president?
If I can't pass this bill now, well, first of all, we are introducing a piece of legislation that I believe has the support of the vast majority of the American people. In Vermont and throughout this country, people are asking themselves, how does it happen in America that we have bright young people who cannot afford to go to college? So I'm going to do everything that I can to get this bill passed. But maybe the answer is that the time is long overdue for the United States Congress to start listening to the needs of the American people and not just Wall Street. All right? Yes, sir. You are with? Right. I think President Obama's initiative on community college was an important step forward, and I applaud him for this. This, in fact, goes further. I have a lot of respect for community colleges, but there are a lot of young people who are not just in community colleges. They're going to state universities and their state colleges, and this is what we've got to do. And once again, let me just say this. This is not a radical idea. This is not only in a Congress dominated by Wall Street and big money is this considered to be a radical idea. Who would deny that if we are serious about having a competitive and strong economy, that we need the best educated workforce in the world? Does anyone not believe that? Who would deny that it is totally stupid, totally absurd, that hundreds of thousands of bright young kids who can add so much to this country are now not able to go to college, and others are strangling in debt? This is not a radical idea. This is a common sense idea, and I'm going to do everything I can with supporters all over America to see that it's passed. Thank you all very much.